exposing the secret to endless fun on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Our channel's packed with epic content, exclusive tips, and a vibrant community. Don't miss out. Subscribing gets you front row seats to all the action. So what are you waiting for? Smash that subscribe button now and join the fun.
The year is 1914. Europe, a tapestry woven from empires and alliances, stands at the precipice of disaster. The seeds of conflict sown in the preceding decades are about to bear bitter fruit. Nationalism, a powerful force, surged through the veins of Europe's great powers. Each nation, fueled by a potent mix of pride and ambition, viewed itself as superior, its interests paramount. Imperialism, the relentless pursuit of colonial possessions, further stoked the fires of rivalry. The scramble for Africa and Asia had left the great powers eyeing each other with suspicion, their hands hovering over the hilts of their sabers. Entangling alliances forged in the name of security had become a tangled web, ensnaring nations in commitments they barely understood. Like a house of cards, the European system, so carefully constructed, was about to be toppled by a single fateful event. On June 28, 1914, in the bustling city of Sarajevo, a shot rang out. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, lay dead, assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. This act of violence, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, would prove to be the spark that ignited the powder keg of Europe. Austria-Hungary, enraged by the assassination, issued an ultimatum to Serbia, a small nation with powerful allies. Germany, bound by treaty to Austria-Hungary, pledged its unwavering support. Russia, feeling duty-bound to protect Serbia, mobilized its vast army. The intricate web of alliances designed to prevent war had instead become a noose tightening around Europe's neck. On August 1, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia, setting in motion a chain reaction that would engulf the continent in flames. France, bound by treaty to Russia, and Britain, fearing German aggression, soon followed suit. Within a matter of days, the great powers of Europe were at war. The conflict, initially envisioned as a short and decisive affair, would prove to be anything but. It would be a war unlike any other, a war of unprecedented scale and brutality, a war that would forever scar the face of Europe. The German war machine, fueled by a belief in a swift victory, rolled through neutral Belgium, their sights set on Paris. The French and British, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the German advance, fought bravely but were forced to retreat. The Battle of the Marne, fought in September 1914, marked a turning point in the war. The French, bolstered by reinforcements and aided by British forces, launched a desperate counterattack, halting the German advance just miles from Paris. The Schlieffen Plan, Germany's grand strategy for a quick victory, lay in ruins. The Western Front, a jagged scar stretching from the English Channel to the Swiss border, became the focal point of the war. Millions of men, armed with the latest killing machines, faced each other across a narrow strip of no man's land. The war of movement, so characteristic of previous conflicts, gave way to a brutal stalemate, a war of attrition in which territory was measured in yards and lives were expended with reckless abandon. Life in the trenches was a living hell. Imagine, if you will, a labyrinth of muddy ditches infested with rats and lice reeking of death and decay. This was the daily reality for millions of soldiers on the Western Front. The trenches, cold and damp in winter, hot and fetid in summer, offered little protection from the elements or the enemy. Rain transformed the trenches into muddy quagmires, swallowing men and equipment alike. Trench foot, a debilitating condition caused by prolonged exposure to dampness, was a constant threat. Disease, spread by the unsanitary conditions, was rampant, yet amidst this hellscape, soldiers found ways to endure. They played cards, wrote letters home, and clung to the camaraderie that bound them together. They were, after all, brothers in arms, united by a common enemy and a shared experience that transcended language, nationality, and social class. Section 5, Verdun and the Somme, Battles of Attrition. The year 1916 witnessed two of the bloodiest battles in human history, Verdun and the Somme. At Verdun, the Germans, seeking to bleed France white, launched a massive offensive against a seemingly impregnable French fortress complex. The French, determined to hold their ground at all costs, poured men and resources into the meat grinder. The Battle of Verdun, lasting almost an entire year, became a symbol of French resilience. "They shall not pass" became the rallying cry of a nation fighting for its very survival. The Somme, launched in the summer of 1916, was intended to relieve the pressure on the French at Verdun and achieve a decisive breakthrough. The British, employing a strategy of massive artillery bombardment followed by infantry attacks, suffered appalling casualties on the first day of the offensive. Over 57,000 British soldiers became casualties, making it the bloodiest day in British military history. The Battle of the Somme, lasting for months, gained little strategic advantage for the Allies. It became a byword for the futility of war, a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. Section 6. Beyond the Trenches, the Home Front. The impact of the war was not confined to the battlefields of Europe. On the home front, millions of women stepped into the roles vacated by men, working in factories, producing munitions, and keeping the economies of their nations afloat. The war effort touched every aspect of life. Rationing became commonplace as food and other essential goods were diverted to the front lines. Propaganda posters plastered on walls and billboards urged citizens to do their part, to support the troops, and to make sacrifices for the sake of victory. The war, once a distant rumble, had now entered their homes, their workplaces, and their lives. Section 7. Untold Stories, the Unsung Heroes. The Great War was not solely fought by soldiers in the trenches. It was a conflict that witnessed the courage and sacrifice of countless individuals, their stories often overlooked in the grand narratives of history. Nurses, many of them volunteers, braved enemy fire and deplorable conditions to tend to the wounded and dying. Messengers, often young boys too young to enlist, carried vital messages through a hail of bullets. And let us not forget the animals, the horses, mules, and even dogs who served alongside their human counterparts, carrying supplies, detecting mines, and providing companionship in the darkest of times. Section 8. The Armistice and a Flawed Peace. By 1918, the tide of war began to turn. The United States, drawn into the conflict by German submarine warfare, tipped the balance of power in favor of the Allies. Germany, exhausted and facing internal unrest, sued for peace. On November 11, 1918, at 11 o'clock in the morning, the guns fell silent. The armistice, signed in a railway carriage in Compiègne Forest, brought an end to the fighting. The world, weary of war, rejoiced. But the peace negotiated at the Palace of Versailles proved to be a fragile one. Germany, saddled with crippling reparations and blamed for the war, felt humiliated and resentful. The seeds of future conflict sown in the ashes of the Great War would eventually bear bitter fruit. Section 9. The Great War's Long Shadow. The Great War, a conflict that claimed the lives of millions and shattered the old order, cast a long shadow over the 20th century. It ushered in an era of uncertainty and instability, paving the way for the rise of totalitarian regimes and the outbreak of another, even more devastating world war. The war's legacy continues to shape our world today. It serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict, the enduring power of nationalism, and the importance of international cooperation in a world increasingly interconnected. The Great War, though a century past, still speaks to us today, urging us to remember the lessons of the past and to strive for a future free from the scourge of war.